Ethan Hayes watched his wife, Chloe, through the kitchen window. She was pacing the manicured lawn of their backyard, her laughter a sharp, alien sound as it carried through the glass. She moved like a restless creature in a cage he hadn't realized he'd built. Just 3 months ago, Chloe would have beckoned him over, eager to share the joke. Now, she slipped outside every time her phone buzzed, shutting him out. "You're just being paranoid," he whispered to the empty room, forcing his attention back to his laptop. The accounting software glowed with its familiar, comforting numbers. Payroll, expenses, quarterly projections. Everything was in perfect order, a stark contrast to the unraveling fabric of his life. The calls had started back in September. Always at night, always taken outside. Chloe glided back into the kitchen, sliding the phone into her pocket with a practiced smoothness that made his stomach clench. "Work?" Ethan asked, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Client emergency," she said, her voice a little too breezy as she moved toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted. Going to shower and get some sleep." Ethan nodded, typing a nonsensical formula into his spreadsheet. A client emergency at 9:30 on a Thursday night for an HR firm. Right. The pipes upstairs groaned as the water started. Ethan minimized his work and opened their shared cloud storage, a digital scrapbook of their life together, filled with photos, documents, and automatic phone backups. He'd set it up years ago when they first moved in, a romantic gesture from a man who wanted to share everything. Chloe had thought it was sweet. Now, her text messages populated his screen in real time. The most recent thread felt like a punch to the gut. A man named Grant wrote, "Can't wait for tomorrow night. Same place." Chloe's reply appeared instantly. "Yes, he's working late again. He won't suspect a thing." "Good," Grant texted back. "I brought you something special." "You spoil me." "Love you," Chloe wrote. The words swam before Ethan's eyes. "Love you." She hadn't said that to him in months. The sound of the shower was a distant hum. He scrolled up, his heart sinking with each message he read. Weeks of them. Hotel bookings, dinner reservations, intimate photos he had never seen. He was surprised to find his hands weren't shaking. Instead, a chilling cold settled deep in his chest, like ice slowly forming over a dark lake. He opened a new document and began to type. Locations, times, credit card numbers. He organized every damning detail into neat columns, just like the financial ledgers at work. The shower stopped. Ethan clicked back to his spreadsheet, his fingers moving automatically across the keys. When Chloe came downstairs in her plush robe, he looked up and offered the same tired smile he had worn for 15 years. "How was your day?" he asked. "Long," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "I'm heading straight to bed." "Sleep well." She paused at the foot of the stairs, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan thought she might say something real, something true. Instead, she just gave a slight nod and disappeared up the staircase. He waited until he heard their bedroom door click shut, then opened his laptop again. Grant Voss, Senior Vice President at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, Chloe's company. Married, 2 kids, drove a black Tesla Model S. Ethan pulled up the employee directory and found Grant's corporate headshot. Square jaw, expensive suit, and a self-assured smile that radiated corporate arrogance. Everything Ethan felt he wasn't. But Ethan possessed something Grant didn't: administrator access to Pinnacle's financial systems. 3 years prior, when Chloe started at Pinnacle, they'd needed a consultant to help set up their new expense tracking software. Ethan had volunteered, spending 2 weekends configuring their database, creating user permissions, and establishing backup protocols. They had never revoked his administrator privileges. He logged in and pulled up Grant's expense reports. The digital trail was a roadmap of their deceit. Dinner at Russo's Steakhouse, $93. A king suite at the downtown Marriott, $247. A client spa package for 2 at the Ritz-Carlton, $412. All meticulously charged to the company card as client entertainment. For the first time in weeks, a slow, cold smile spread across Ethan's face. Grant was stealing from his own company to finance his affair. It was sloppy, arrogant, exactly what Ethan would expect from a man who believed he was untouchable. But Ethan wasn't ready to make his move. Not yet. He needed more. He needed everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan transformed. He was no longer the husband who asked about Chloe's day, who made her coffee just the way she liked it, or who pretended not to notice she now showered before bed instead of after. This new Ethan was patient, methodical, and utterly ruthless. He collected data like a scientist gathering specimens in a lab. Chloe's phone continued to back up to the cloud every night at 2 a.m. Ethan set his alarm for 2:15, meticulously reviewing her messages, photos, and call logs. He cross-referenced her location data with credit card statements, mapping out their meeting spots, their routines, their lies. She told him she was working late on Tuesday nights for a new client onboarding project. In reality, she was at Grant's sleek apartment in the warehouse district. She claimed she had girls' nights with her friend Olivia on Fridays. She was actually checking into different hotels with Grant, treating their infidelity like a game. The most damning evidence came from Grant's company phone, which also auto-synced to Pinnacle's cloud. Ethan discovered a treasure trove of their betrayal: photos of Chloe in Grant's office after hours, wearing the black dress Ethan had bought her for their anniversary, videos of them in the main conference room during lunch breaks, even audio recordings of them mocking Ethan's boring job and pathetic social life. He actually asked if I wanted to go to Dave & Buster's for our anniversary. Chloe's voice crackled through Ethan's headphones. Dave & Buster's, like we're 12 years old. Grant's laughter was rich and dismissive. What did you tell him? I said I had to work late, Chloe replied. Then I came here, and you made me forget all about mini golf and chicken tenders. More laughter followed. Ethan saved the audio file, adding it to his rapidly growing archive of their deceit. By early November, he had it all. 6 weeks of irrefutable evidence. Hundreds of photos. Credit card fraud amounting to nearly $30,000. And detailed records of Grant using company resources to carry on his personal affairs. But still, he wasn't ready. He needed Chloe to feel secure, comfortable. He needed her to get even sloppier, to make bigger mistakes. So, he became the perfect husband again. He cooked her favorite meals. He brought home flowers on random Tuesdays. He suggested spontaneous weekend trips to charming bed and breakfasts they'd never visited. You're being so sweet lately, Chloe said one evening, cutting into the perfectly grilled salmon he'd prepared. What's the occasion? Can't I just appreciate my beautiful wife? Ethan asked, refilling her wine glass. She smiled, but it was a brittle thing that didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, it's just different. Different how? I don't know, she mused. You seem happier lately. More confident. Ethan was happier. For the first time in months, he had a clear purpose, a master plan. He was 3 moves ahead in a game they didn't even know they were playing. Maybe I'm just feeling grateful for what we have, he said smoothly. Chloe's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Yeah, she said. Me too. That weekend, Ethan suggested they sit down and update their financial planning, joint savings, retirement funds, emergency reserves. Trusting as ever, Chloe signed the stack of papers without a second glance, leaving Ethan to handle the boring details, as she always had. What she didn't know was that with her signature, she had just authorized him to move everything into a series of individual accounts under his name only. Their joint savings of $43,000 was now scattered across 3 different banks, nestled safely in Ethan's personal portfolio. Their shared retirement account had been transferred to a self-directed IRA that Chloe couldn't touch without his signature. She would find out eventually, of course, but by then, it would be far too late. Ethan also opened new accounts she knew nothing about, a business checking account for his burgeoning consulting work, investment portfolios solely in his name. He even rented a safe deposit box at a bank across town, where he stored printed copies of everything: the photos, the text messages, the financial records, the legal documents. The preparation phase was nearly complete. He just needed one more piece for his intricate puzzle. Leo Vance was a part-time intern in Ethan's office, a quiet and observant accounting student finishing his degree. At 22, he was the kind of young man who noticed details but kept his observations to himself. Leo, Ethan said one Tuesday morning, can I ask you something? Sure, Mr. Hayes. Hypothetically, Ethan began, if you suspected someone was stealing from their company, how would you go about proving it? Leo glanced around the empty office. Well, what kind of stealing are we talking about? Credit card fraud, faked expense reports, using company resources for personal gain. A slight smile touched Leo's lips. Hypothetically, you'd need documentation. Bank records, receipts, and if possible, testimony from witnesses. The more evidence you have, the stronger your case. Why do you ask? Leo ventured. Ethan shrugged, feigning casual curiosity. Just curious. I've been reading about some big corporate fraud cases lately. Leo nodded, but Ethan could see the gears turning in the young man's sharp mind. Leo was smart, he would figure it out eventually. Ethan didn't mind. He might need an ally before this was all over. The following Friday, Ethan put his plan into motion. He called in sick to work, a rare event that wouldn't arouse suspicion. Instead of staying home, he drove to Pinnacle Tech Solutions and parked across the street. At precisely 11:30 a.m., he watched Grant's Tesla glide out of the parking garage. Ethan had been tracking Grant's movements for weeks. Every Friday, he left work early for client meetings that were, in fact, trips to his apartment with Chloe. They would spend the afternoon together, and Grant would return to the office around 4 p.m. to maintain the illusion of a dedicated executive. Ethan waited 15 minutes, then walked into Pinnacle's gleaming lobby as if he belonged there. "I'm here to see Grant Voss," he told the receptionist. "I'm Ethan Hayes, Chloe's husband. Grant asked me to drop off some financial documents." The receptionist beamed. "Oh, Mr. Hayes. Chloe talks about you all the time. I think Grant just stepped out, but I can get someone from his team." "Actually," Ethan said smoothly, "he told me to just leave everything on his desk. It's just some boring company policy stuff." "Of course. He's on the 5th floor, the corner office. Do you need a visitor badge?" "That would be great, thanks." Moments later, Ethan rode the elevator to the 5th floor, the visitor badge clipped to his jacket, looking every bit the part of a businessman handling routine paperwork. Grant's office was exactly as he had imagined: floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive leather furniture, and a wall covered in awards and certifications. Ethan wasted no time. He plugged a small USB drive into Grant's computer and ran a data extraction program he'd downloaded. 47 minutes to copy the entire contents of Grant's hard drive. While he waited, he placed a tiny recording device under the massive mahogany desk and another inside the air vent directly above the leather chair. When the file transfer was complete, Ethan pocketed the USB drive and left a manila envelope on Grant's desk. "Confidential" was written across the front in bold letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message typed in a standard business font: "Your services are no longer required." Grant would likely dismiss it as a prank or an inter-office mistake and toss it without a second thought. But Ethan would have it on camera when he read it, and that footage might prove useful later. Leaving Pinnacle, Ethan felt a jolt of electricity. 6 months ago, he was a boring accountant whose biggest thrill was a perfectly balanced quarterly report. Now, he was dismantling people's lives with the precision of a surgeon. He stopped at a hardware store on the way home and bought more surveillance equipment: wireless cameras, audio recorders, GPS trackers. All perfectly legal to own, and all incredibly useful for gathering information. That evening, Chloe came home with Chinese takeout and a guilty smile. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, unpacking the containers on the kitchen counter. Olivia needed to talk through some personal stuff. Ethan nodded, helping her serve the food. He had watched Olivia leave work at 3 p.m. and spend the rest of the afternoon shopping at Target. Chloe had been at Grant's apartment until just 20 minutes ago. "Everything okay with Olivia?" he asked, his voice laced with false concern. "Marriage problems," Chloe sighed. "Her husband's being difficult about money." "That's tough," Ethan said, his expression somber. "Marriage is hard work." Chloe glanced at him. "Yeah, it is." They ate their dinner in a comfortable silence, each lost in their own world. Ethan was calculating timelines and evidence chains. Chloe was probably reliving the afternoon, thinking about Grant's hands on her skin or concocting the next lie she would tell her unsuspecting husband. After dinner, Ethan excused himself to take out the trash. Instead, he walked to the visitor parking lot and found Grant's Tesla. He quickly placed a small, magnetic GPS tracker under the rear bumper. The device would send location updates to his phone every 5 minutes for the next 6 months. Now, he could track Grant's every move in real time. Every clandestine meeting, every tryst, every lie would be automatically documented. Phase 2 was ready to begin. Monday morning, Ethan arrived at work early and dialed the anonymous fraud hotline for Pinnacle Tech Solutions. Using a slightly disguised voice, he gave them Grant Voss's name, employee ID, and specific details about the credit card abuse. "I'm calling to report expense report fraud," he said evenly. "Grant Voss has been charging personal expenses to his corporate card for months." "Can you provide specific examples?" the investigator on the other end asked. Ethan read from his meticulously organized notes, listing dates, amounts, and merchant names. 26 separate incidents, totaling just over $30,000. Hotels, restaurants, even spa treatments, all falsely reported as client entertainment. "We will investigate this immediately," the investigator said. "Can you provide your name and contact information?" "I prefer to remain anonymous," Ethan replied. "Just check his expense reports against his credit card statements. The evidence speaks for itself." He hung up and went back to his desk, processing invoices and updating spreadsheets as if nothing had happened. But inside, he was counting down the hours until Grant's world began to crumble. The investigation moved with surprising speed. By Wednesday afternoon, Grant's company credit card was suspended. By Friday, internal auditors were combing through his expense reports from the past 2 years. Ethan monitored the escalating situation through the Pinnacle employee portal, which still granted him access to certain administrative functions. Grant had been summoned to 3 separate meetings with HR and the legal department. His assistant had been questioned about his travel schedules and client interactions. Chloe came home that Friday night looking pale and stressed. "Rough week?" Ethan asked casually. "Someone's been spreading vicious rumors about Grant," she said, pouring herself a large glass of wine. "Saying he's been stealing from the company." "That's serious," Ethan said, feigning surprise. "What kind of rumors?" "Credit card stuff. Personal expenses charged to his business account. It's obviously just someone with a grudge trying to get him fired." Ethan nodded sympathetically. "Office politics can be brutal. I'm sure the truth will come out." "I hope so," she said, her voice tight. "Grant's a good guy. He doesn't deserve this." Ethan gently squeezed her shoulder. "The right thing usually happens in the end." Chloe seemed to relax under his touch, likely relieved that her boring, predictable husband was being so understanding about her work stress. If only she knew that her boring husband had orchestrated the entire thing. That weekend, Ethan implemented the next phase of his plan. He printed every photo, every text message, every piece of evidence he had painstakingly collected over the past 3 months. The documentation filled 2 large binders, organized chronologically with tabs and index labels. His old accounting professors would have been impressed by his attention to detail. He made multiple copies of everything and stored them in different locations: his office, his new safe deposit box, and a storage unit he'd rented under a false name. If anything happened to one set of evidence, he had backups. He also prepared several digital packages, each tailored for a different audience. One folder contained all the evidence of Grant's corporate fraud, formatted for law enforcement and company investigators. Another contained the intimate photos and messages proving the affair, designed for Grant's wife and family. A third package focused specifically on Chloe's role in the scheme, perfect for divorce proceedings and asset protection. Each package told a different part of the story, but they all led to the same inescapable conclusion: Grant and Chloe had betrayed everyone who trusted them, and now they would face the consequences. Monday morning brought the news that Grant had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the fraud investigation. Chloe tried to hide her panic, but Ethan could see it in the way she gripped her coffee mug, her knuckles white, and checked her phone every 30 seconds. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," she snapped, a little too quickly. "Just work stuff. Want to talk about it?" "It's nothing you'd understand," she said dismissively. "Corporate politics." Ethan felt a flash of anger at her condescending tone, but he kept his expression neutral. "Try me," he said. "I might surprise you." Chloe looked at him as if she were seeing a stranger. "Since when do you care about office drama?" "Since it started making my wife come home stressed out every night," he replied. "I want to help." "You can help by not asking so many questions." She left for work without kissing him goodbye, a morning ritual she had performed automatically for 15 years, until recently. Ethan watched her drive away, then opened his laptop and began composing an email. The recipient was Megan Voss, Grant's wife. Ethan had found her contact information through a combination of social media and public records. Megan Voss, 36 years old, worked as a pediatric nurse, had 2 young children, and, by all accounts, had no idea her husband was a lying, cheating thief. Ethan's email was brief and professional. Mrs. Voss, I have information regarding your husband's recent difficulties at his workplace that I believe you should be aware of. The situation is more complicated than you might realize. I can provide documentation if you are interested. This is not a joke or a scam. Your family's financial security may be at risk. He included a secure, untraceable phone number and email address he had set up specifically for this purpose. No personal information, no emotional appeals, just the facts and an offer to provide the evidence. He sent the email and went to work, wondering how long it would take for Megan to respond. The answer came that afternoon. The secure phone rang while Ethan was in the middle of reviewing quarterly projections. "This is Megan Voss," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of anxiety and suspicion. "You sent me an email about my husband." "Thank you for calling," Ethan said calmly. "I know this must be difficult, but you deserve to know what's happening. Who are you? How do you know about Grant's problems at work?" "I'm someone who discovered information that affects your family," he explained. "Grant has been stealing money from his company and using it to fund an extramarital affair. The fraud investigation is just the beginning." There was a heavy silence on the line. In the background, Ethan could hear the faint sound of children playing. "That's impossible," Megan said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "Grant wouldn't, he's not perfect, but he wouldn't steal." "I can prove everything I'm telling you," Ethan said gently. "Photos, financial records, recorded conversations. But I need you to understand, once you see this evidence, you can't unsee it. Your marriage will never be the same." "Send me everything," Megan said without a moment's hesitation. "I need to know." That evening, Ethan spent 2 hours preparing Megan's evidence package. He included photos of Grant and Chloe together, copies of the fraudulent expense reports, bank records showing illicit money transfers, and the audio recordings of their private, mocking conversations. He organized it all chronologically, starting with the first signs of the affair and building to the undeniable proof of corporate fraud. By the time Megan finished reviewing it, she would have a complete and devastating picture of how her husband had betrayed both his family and his employer. Ethan delivered the package personally, driving to Megan's house after she had put her children to bed. She answered the door still in her scrubs, having just returned from a late shift at the hospital. "You're smaller than I expected," she said, studying his face. "Disappointed." "Relieved, actually," she admitted. "I was afraid you might be some kind of stalker or extortionist." Ethan handed her the thick folder. "I'm just someone who believes people should know the truth about their own lives." Megan flipped through the first few pages, her expression hardening with each photograph she saw. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice flat. 3 months. "How long have you suspected?" 6 months, maybe longer, she confessed. "Grant's been working late, traveling more, spending money we didn't have. I just thought he was being ambitious, pushing for that next promotion." She closed the folder, a look of profound disillusionment on her face. "I was so stupid." "You trusted your husband," Ethan corrected her. "That's not stupid." Megan looked at him with a newfound curiosity. "What's your connection to all of this? You're not doing this just out of the goodness of your heart." Ethan considered lying, but decided Megan deserved the truth. "Grant's affair partner," he said, "is my wife." "Oh." Megan's anger seemed to soften, replaced by something akin to sympathy. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said. "We're both better off knowing the truth." Megan nodded, clutching the evidence folder to her chest like a shield. "What happens now?" "That's up to you," Ethan replied. "But if you want my advice, protect yourself financially before Grant realizes what you know. Change your passwords, secure your bank accounts, and consult a lawyer. This is going to get ugly." "What about you?" she asked. "What are you going to do about your wife?" Ethan smiled, a cold, sharp expression that made Megan look, for the first time, slightly afraid of him. "Oh, I'm just getting started," he said. Driving home, Ethan felt lighter than he had in months. 2 down, 2 to go. Grant was facing corporate fraud charges and an imminent divorce that would decimate his finances. Chloe didn't know it yet, but her world was about to collapse, too. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Olivia Pierce, Chloe's friend, called Ethan's office, something that had never happened before. "Ethan, it's Olivia Pierce, Chloe's friend. I need to talk to you about something important." Ethan kept his voice carefully neutral. "What can I help you with, Olivia?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me for coffee today? Is everything okay?" "Please, Ethan," she urged. "It's about Chloe." They met at a small, quiet cafe near Ethan's office. Olivia looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing around as if she expected someone to be watching them. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her hands trembling slightly. "I wasn't sure you'd come. You said it was about Chloe." Olivia stirred her coffee, her spoon clinking against the ceramic. "She's in trouble, Ethan. Big trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that could ruin her life," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And maybe yours, too." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying Olivia's face. She was scared, but not of him. She was scared of something bigger. "I'm listening," he said. "Chloe's been having an affair," Olivia said in a rush of words. "With her boss, Grant. 4 months. They've been stealing money from the company to pay for hotels and trips and expensive dinners. Grant's already been suspended, and I think they're going to arrest him soon." Ethan nodded calmly. "That's terrible. Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Olivia said, leaning forward, "Chloe's planning to blame everything on Grant. She's going to say he coerced her, that she was a victim. She's already been talking to lawyers about how to protect herself." "Protect herself from what?" "From the fraud charges, from the divorce, from losing everything," Olivia explained. "Ethan, she's planning to take you for everything you're worth. The house, the savings, your retirement fund. She thinks you're too weak to fight back." The familiar ice began to form in Ethan's chest. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I'm tired of being used," Olivia whispered fiercely. "Chloe's been making me lie for her, cover for her, help her deceive you. I thought it was just girl code, you know, helping a friend through a rough patch. But this isn't friendship. It's a conspiracy." Ethan took a slow sip of his coffee, processing this new, invaluable information. Olivia wasn't just Chloe's accomplice, she was also her greatest weakness. A co-conspirator with inside knowledge who could be turned. "What does Chloe think happened to Grant?" he asked. "She thinks one of his rivals at work reported him," Olivia said. "Corporate jealousy, that kind of thing. She has no idea that someone has been watching them, collecting evidence." "Interesting," Ethan mused. "What would you do if you were in my position?" Olivia stared at him, her eyes wide. "You already know, don't you? About the affair." Ethan didn't answer directly. "What would you do?" "I'd protect myself," she said immediately. "Get a lawyer, secure my assets, and file for divorce before she could." "That's good advice," Ethan said. "Anything else?" "I'd make sure she couldn't pin the fraud on me if things went bad," Olivia added. "Cover my tracks. Document everything." Ethan smiled. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for, Olivia." "Smart enough to know when I'm being played," she retorted. Ethan finished his coffee and stood up. "Thank you for the warning," he said, leaving cash on the table. "It's more helpful than you know." "Ethan, wait," she called after him. "What are you going to do?" "The right thing," he said. "Eventually." Ethan drove back to his office, his mind racing with new possibilities. Olivia's betrayal of Chloe was an unexpected gift. If he could convince her to testify against Chloe in a legal proceeding, his case would be airtight. But first, he needed to accelerate his timeline. If Chloe was already plotting her legal strategy, he needed to strike before she could establish her false narrative as Grant's victim. That afternoon, Ethan called a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, but Victoria Sharp, the best and most feared family law specialist in the city. She had a reputation for ruthless efficiency and complete discretion. I need to discuss a complex marital situation, Ethan told her secretary. It involves financial fraud, adultery, and asset protection. Can Ms. Sharp see me today? She has an opening at 4:30, the secretary replied. I'll take it. Ethan spent his lunch break organizing the evidence for the divorce proceedings. This required a different kind of documentation than the criminal case against Grant: financial records, irrefutable proof of adultery, and now, evidence of Chloe's intent to defraud him in the divorce. Victoria Sharp was exactly as advertised: sharp, professional, and utterly immune to emotional appeals. How long have you been married? She asked, her eyes scanning the preliminary information Ethan had provided. 15 years, he replied. No children. Our assets include a house worth about $400,000. Joint savings around $40,000, and retirement accounts totaling $200,000, plus my business income and her salary. And you said she's planning to file first? According to my source, yes, Ethan confirmed. She intends to portray herself as the victim of her lover's manipulation, while simultaneously claiming I was emotionally abusive or financially controlling. Victoria raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Were you? I managed our finances because I'm an accountant and she didn't want to be bothered with the details, Ethan stated. Everything was transparent, jointly owned, and mutually agreed upon. Until recently. What changed recently? Ethan slid a folder across the polished desk. I moved our joint assets into individual accounts when I discovered the affair. Everything is documented, completely legal, and was done within my rights as a joint account holder. Victoria flipped through the bank statements and legal forms. You've been busy. I wanted to protect myself before the situation escalated. Smart, she conceded. What's your goal here, Mr. Hayes? I want her to get nothing, Ethan said, his voice cold and even. No alimony, no property settlement, no claim on my retirement funds. I want her to face the consequences of her choices without being able to use me as her financial safety net. That's an aggressive stance, Victoria noted. Judges don't typically favor vindictive divorces. This isn't vindictive. It's justice, Ethan countered. She committed adultery, she participated in corporate fraud, and she was actively planning to defraud me. I have evidence of all of it. Victoria studied his face for a long moment. You're not what I expected when you called. What did you expect? A victim, she said frankly. Someone angry, hurt, and desperate for revenge. She closed the folder. But you're not a victim, are you, Mr. Hayes? Ethan smiled. Not anymore. They spent the next hour mapping out Ethan's legal strategy. File for divorce first, immediately, to control the narrative. Request an immediate asset protection order based on the evidence of her fraudulent intent. Demand full financial disclosure from her side while providing only selective, powerful evidence of her misconduct. This is going to get ugly, Victoria warned him. She'll fight back hard once she realizes what's happening. I'm counting on it, Ethan said. The harder she fights, the more desperate she'll look. And desperate people make mistakes. Ethan left Victoria's office feeling a sense of control he hadn't experienced in months. For too long, Chloe and Grant had been playing a game with his marriage, his trust, and his future. Now, it was his turn to play. That evening, Chloe came home looking utterly exhausted. Grant's suspension had been extended indefinitely, and the company was now conducting formal interviews with every employee who had ever worked closely with him. They questioned me today, she told Ethan over dinner. About Grant's expense reports, his client meetings, his work schedule. That must have been stressful, Ethan said, carefully cutting his steak. They made it sound like I was involved somehow, she continued, like I knew what he was doing and didn't report it. Did you know? Ethan asked, his eyes fixed on hers. Of course not. How would I know about his expense reports? You worked closely with him, didn't you? Attended client meetings, traveled together sometimes. Chloe's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Why are you asking me that? Just curious, he said with a shrug. If they're questioning everyone who worked with him, they must be looking for patterns. People who might have witnessed something suspicious. I never witnessed anything suspicious, she insisted. I'm sure you told them that, Ethan said. Yes, I did. Good, he replied. The truth is always the best defense. Chloe finished her meal in silence, likely wondering why Ethan was suddenly so interested in her work situation. She had no idea that he had already provided the investigators with damning evidence of her involvement in Grant's fraudulent scheme. Anonymous tips were a beautiful thing. Ethan had called Pinnacle's ethics hotline 3 times in the past week, each time from a different burner phone, each time providing specific, verifiable information about Chloe's role in Grant's misconduct. Chloe had attended the fake client meetings. She had signed off on fraudulent expense reports as Grant's departmental liaison. She had even used Grant's company credit card for personal purchases, thinking the transactions would be safely buried in his account. Ethan had photos of her using the card at boutiques and restaurants. He had copies of her digital signature on expense reports that were clearly fraudulent. He had recorded conversations where she and Grant discussed using company resources for their personal benefit. The investigators would have found all of this evidence eventually. Ethan was just helping them connect the dots much, much faster. Friday morning brought the news Ethan had been waiting for. Grant Voss was arrested at his home on charges of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The total amount stolen was now estimated to be over $50,000, far more than Ethan had initially calculated. Chloe called him at work, sobbing hysterically. "They arrested Grant," she cried. "FBI agents came to the office this morning. They seized his computer, his files, everything." "I'm sorry to hear that," Ethan said calmly. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. They're saying he could go to prison for 10 years. 10 years, Ethan. That's what happens when people steal from their employers," he replied flatly. "But what if they think I was involved? What if they arrest me, too?" This was the moment he had been waiting for. "Why would they arrest you?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe because I worked with him, or because we were friends." Friends. The word hung in the air between them. A long silence followed. Ethan could almost hear the gears in her mind grinding, trying to calculate how much he knew. "We were close," she said finally. "Professionally." "I see," he said. "Well, if you didn't do anything wrong, you should be fine. Should I get a lawyer?" "That's up to you," he replied. "Innocent people don't usually need lawyers, but if it would make you feel better." "I think I should. Just in case." "Good idea," he said. "I can recommend someone if you'd like." He gave her the name of a criminal defense attorney, not a very good one, but someone who would happily take her money and provide mediocre, ineffective representation. Meanwhile, Ethan was being represented by the best family law attorney in the city. That afternoon, he received a call from Megan Voss. "They arrested Grant this morning," she said without any preamble. "I heard," he replied. "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," she said, her voice strong. "I had him served with divorce papers while he was in jail." His lawyer was furious, but there wasn't much he could do. Ethan laughed, a genuine laugh of appreciation. "Excellent timing. I learned from the best," she said. "How's your situation progressing?" "Chloe doesn't know about the divorce yet, but she's starting to realize her world is falling apart. She called me in a panic about Grant's arrest, worried she'll be charged, too." "Will she be?" "That depends on how much evidence the investigators find," Ethan said, "and how cooperative her former accomplices are willing to be." Megan was quiet for a moment. "Accomplices, plural." "Chloe had help covering up the affair," he explained. "Friends who provided alibis, coworkers who facilitated their meetings. People who might be willing to testify against her if they think it will save themselves." "You've really thought this all through, haven't you?" "I've had a lot of time to plan," he said. "By the way, Grant's asking about you. He knows someone fed information to the investigators, and he's trying to figure out who." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," she said. "But his lawyer thinks it might have been a disgruntled employee or a business rival, someone with access to company records." "Let them think that," Ethan said. "The longer they focus on the wrong suspect, the more time I have to prepare." He hung up. A deep sense of satisfaction washing over him. Grant was in jail, facing serious federal charges. Megan was moving forward with her divorce and protecting her assets. And Chloe was panicking, but still had no idea of his involvement. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. Saturday morning, Ethan drove to his safe deposit box. He retrieved the copies of all his evidence and organized them into 3 distinct packages, one for Chloe's new criminal defense attorney, one for the divorce proceedings, and one for the media. The media package was his insurance policy. If, by some miracle, Chloe managed to escape legal consequences or successfully paint herself as a victim, Ethan would leak everything to the local news outlets. The photos of her affair, the evidence of her participation in the fraud, the recordings of her mocking her husband while she stole his money, he wouldn't hesitate to destroy her reputation if it meant ensuring she couldn't escape justice. Sunday afternoon, he got the chance to set the final phase in motion. Olivia called him directly, her voice strained with fear. "Ethan, I need to see you again. Something's happened." They met at the same cafe, but this time, Olivia looked genuinely frightened. "Chloe came to see me last night," she said, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold her cup. "She said she knows someone's been watching her and Grant. She's trying to figure out who." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. But she's suspicious of everyone now. She thinks it might be someone from Grant's office, or maybe one of his enemies at the company." "Did she mention my name?" "No," Olivia said, "but she's starting to ask weird questions about you. Like whether you've been acting differently lately, or if you've shown any interest in her work situation." "What kind of questions?" Ethan asked, his gaze intense. "She wanted to know if you'd ever asked me about her schedule, or if I thought you were capable of spying on her." "And what did you say?" "I told her you were too boring and trusting to ever do something like that," she admitted. "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Ethan said dryly. Olivia didn't smile. "Ethan, she's planning something. I can tell. She's scared and desperate, and that makes her dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "I don't know for sure, but she asked me to lie for her if anyone questions me about her relationship with Grant. She wants me to say I never knew they were involved, that I just thought they were work friends." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. "Will you?" "That depends," Olivia said, her fear replaced by a flicker of calculation. "On what you're offering me." Ethan studied her face. She wasn't just scared anymore, she was looking for the best possible deal in a very bad situation. "What do you want?" he asked. "Protection," she said bluntly. "If this goes to trial, I don't want to be charged as an accessory. I helped Chloe lie to you, Ethan. I provided alibis, I covered for her meetings with Grant, I even helped her delete text messages from her phone. If the prosecutors want to make an example of everyone involved, you could face charges," Ethan finished for her. "Exactly," she said. "So, I need to know. Are you going to protect me if I help you?" Ethan pretended to consider it, though in reality, he had been planning to use Olivia's testimony from the very beginning. Her cooperation would make the case against Chloe absolutely unbreakable. "I can't promise you won't face any consequences," he said carefully. "But if you are willing to provide a full statement about Chloe's planning and deception, I will make sure the prosecutors know you cooperated fully." "What about immunity?" "I'm not a prosecutor," he said. "But cooperating witnesses almost always get better deals than accessories who stay silent." Olivia nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "Tell me everything," he said, activating the recording app on his phone. "Every lie you helped her tell. Every meeting you covered for. Every conversation where she discussed her plans. I need dates, times, and specific details." For the next hour, Olivia confessed everything. She recounted how she had helped Chloe invent fake work emergencies to explain her late nights, how she had confirmed false stories about girls' nights and shopping trips, and how she had even helped Chloe rehearse her lies before difficult conversations with him. Most damning of all, Olivia had witnessed conversations where Chloe discussed her plans to divorce Ethan and take half of everything, including his retirement savings and his business assets. "She said you were too passive to fight back," Olivia admitted. "She thought you'd just accept whatever settlement she offered because you don't like conflict." "When was this conversation?" Ethan asked, his voice a low growl. 2 weeks ago. Right after Grant got suspended. She was panicking about money and started talking about her backup plan. By the end of their meeting, Ethan had a recorded confession that proved Chloe's affair wasn't just an act of infidelity, it was part of a calculated, premeditated plan to defraud him. That evening, Ethan had a beautiful dinner ready when Chloe came home. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, her favorite Chardonnay. Everything was perfect, just like the old days. "You're being so sweet lately," Chloe said, settling into her chair. "I feel terrible that I've been so stressed and distracted." "You've been dealing with a lot at work," he said. "I understand." "It's more than that, though," she said, her eyes welling up with crocodile tears. "This whole situation with Grant has me thinking about our marriage. About our future together." Ethan kept his expression perfectly neutral. "What about our future?" "I love you, Ethan," she whispered. "I know I haven't been the best wife lately, but I want to work on that. I want us to be happy again." "I want that, too." Chloe reached across the table and took his hand. "Maybe we should go away together. A long weekend, somewhere nice, away from all this drama. What do you think?" Ethan squeezed her fingers gently. "That sounds wonderful. Where would you like to go?" "Somewhere we've never been before," she said. "Maybe the mountains. We could rent a cabin, disconnect from everything, just focus on each other." "I'll look into it," Ethan promised. But he had no intention of booking a romantic getaway. He recognized the raw desperation in Chloe's voice, the calculated affection in her touch. She was trying to secure his loyalty before her world completely collapsed. It was far too late for that. Monday morning, the news that made Ethan's coffee taste even better arrived. Chloe had been called in for questioning by federal investigators, not as a witness this time, but as a potential co-conspirator. She called him from the parking lot of the FBI field office, her voice trembling. "They think I helped Grant steal the money," she choked out. "They have evidence that I used his company credit card, that I signed the expense reports, that I knew about the fake client meetings." "What did you tell them?" he asked. "The truth," she insisted. "That I didn't know Grant was stealing. That I thought everything was legitimate company business." Ethan almost laughed. Even now, facing federal charges, she was still lying to him. "Did they believe you?" "I don't know. They kept asking about my relationship with Grant, about personal trips and dinners. They made it sound like we were having an affair." "Were you?" The question, so direct and so long unasked, hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Chloe was clearly unprepared for it. A long pause followed. "Of course not," she said finally, her voice unconvincing. "Grant and I were colleagues. Friends, maybe. But nothing more." "Then you should be fine," Ethan said coolly. "Innocent people don't go to prison." "I love you, Chloe. Whatever happens with this investigation, I need you to know that I love you." "I love you, too," he lied, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He was done pretending. That afternoon, Ethan drove to Victoria Sharp's office and signed the divorce papers. "You want to serve her when?" Victoria asked, raising an eyebrow. "Tomorrow," he said. "While she's still reeling from the federal investigation. I want her to understand that her problems are just beginning." "That's cold," Victoria remarked. "Even for me." "She's been planning to divorce me and steal my assets for months," Ethan retorted. "I'm just beating her to the punch." Victoria shrugged. "Your marriage, your choice. But she's going to fight this, and she's going to fight hard." "Let her fight," Ethan said. "I have all the evidence, all the money, and all the legal high ground." "What, exactly, is she going to fight with?" The process server found Chloe at work the next afternoon. Ethan wasn't there to see her reaction, but he imagined it was spectacular, a symphony of shock, rage, panic, and perhaps even a sliver of genuine hurt that her boring, predictable husband had outmaneuvered her so completely. She called him 20 minutes later, screaming. "You filed for divorce? Are you insane? I am dealing with a federal investigation, and you decide to attack me now." "I'm not attacking you, Chloe," Ethan said calmly. "I'm protecting myself." "Protecting yourself from what?" "From a wife who has been lying to me for months," he began, ticking off each point with cold precision. "A wife who committed fraud with her lover and then planned to steal my assets in a divorce. Should I just keep pretending I don't know about any of that?" A stunned silence. He could hear her ragged, shallow breathing on the other end of the line. You know, she whispered finally. I know everything, he confirmed. Every lie, every meeting, every single dollar Grant stole to pay for your affair. I know about your plans to divorce me and take half of everything. I know about the fake work emergencies and the made-up girls' nights. I even know about Olivia helping you practice your lies. How long have you known? Since September, he said. I've been collecting evidence for months. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself from a criminal conspiracy, he corrected her. There's a difference. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What do you want? Nothing from you. Keep whatever personal items you can carry. Everything else stays with me. You can't do this. Half of everything we own is legally mine. Not anymore, he said. Check the paperwork, Chloe. I moved all our assets months ago. It was all perfectly legal, all within my rights as a joint account holder. You own nothing but your car and whatever is in your purse. I'll fight this. I'll take you to court. With what money? He asked. Your salary has been suspended pending the fraud investigation. Grant is in jail. And any decent lawyer will want a hefty retainer up front. He hung up before she could respond. He had said everything that needed to be said. That evening, Ethan came home to a quiet, empty house. Chloe had taken some clothes and personal items, but everything else remained exactly where it belonged. She had left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a hastily scribbled note. It contained only 2 words, "You win." But Ethan wasn't finished yet. Wednesday morning, he called Detective Isabella Rossi, the lead investigator on the Grant Voss fraud case. I have additional evidence you should see, he told her. What kind of evidence? Financial records, recorded conversations, documentation of a conspiracy. What kind of conspiracy? Grant Voss and Chloe Hayes weren't just having an affair, he explained. They were planning to use the stolen money to start a new life together. Chloe was going to divorce me, claim half of our assets, and then combine that with Grant's stolen funds to finance their escape. Detective Rossi was very interested. Ethan spent 2 hours at the police station, providing a detailed statement and handing over his meticulously organized evidence. By the end of the meeting, Chloe had been upgraded from a person of interest to an active suspect in the conspiracy. Thursday afternoon, Chloe was arrested at the temporary apartment she was staying in. Ethan watched the news coverage from his office, a cold, quiet feeling settling over him. It wasn't satisfaction, not exactly. It was more like the quiet contentment of a ledger finally being balanced. The local news portrayed it as a dramatic corporate love affair gone wrong, a high-powered executive and his subordinate stealing company funds to finance their affair, betraying their spouses and their employer in the process. Ethan was mentioned only briefly as the victim husband, a boring accountant, who had helped investigators uncover the conspiracy. Boring. If only they knew. Friday evening, his phone rang with an unknown number. This is Chloe, she said, her voice flat and defeated. I get one phone call. I'm listening. I need you to bail me out, she pleaded. Please, Ethan. I can't stay in here. And why would I do that? Because somewhere under all of this anger, you still love me, she said, her voice cracking. We were married for 15 years, Ethan. That has to mean something. He considered hanging up. Instead, he decided to give her one last gift, the unvarnished truth. I did love you, he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. For 15 years, I loved you more than my own life. I would have done anything for you, given you anything you wanted. All you had to do was ask. Ethan. But you didn't ask, did you? He continued. You lied. You cheated. You stole from me and you planned to destroy me. You turned our marriage into a crime scene. I made mistakes, she sobbed. I can change. No, you can't, he said. Because you don't think you did anything wrong. Even now, sitting in a jail cell, you think you're the victim. You think I'm the villain for refusing to be destroyed quietly. What do you want me to say? She whispered. Nothing, he replied. There's nothing you can say that I ever want to hear again. He hung up and blocked the number. Over the weekend, Ethan received visits from both Olivia and Megan. Olivia wanted to discuss her testimony in the upcoming trial. Megan wanted to thank him for his help with her divorce. Grant is going to plead guilty, she told him. His lawyer says he'll likely get 5 to 7 years if he cooperates with the prosecution. And what about Chloe? Her lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, too, but the prosecutors want her to testify against Grant first. Apparently, they think she was more involved than he initially claimed. Ethan nodded. Grant was probably still trying to protect her, not knowing that Chloe had thrown him under the bus months ago in her conversations with Olivia. "How are you handling everything?" he asked Megan. "Better than I ever expected," she said with a small, genuine smile. "The divorce should be final next month, and I'll get most of our assets, since he can't claim property that was purchased with stolen money. The kids are adjusting, and honestly, we're all relieved he's gone." "Any regrets?" Megan considered this for a moment. "I regret not seeing the truth sooner," she said. "But I don't regret ending it. What about you?" "No regrets at all." Monday morning brought the news that Chloe had been denied bail. The judge deemed her a flight risk, citing hidden assets, a pattern of deceit, and clear evidence of her planning to evade the consequences of her actions. Ethan's divorce proceeded smoothly. With Chloe in jail and unable to afford competent legal representation, her court-appointed attorney advised her to accept his settlement offer. She would receive nothing except her personal belongings and the whatever was left in her individual checking account, approximately $1,200. The house, the savings, the retirement funds, his business assets, everything stayed with him. 15 years of marriage, dissolved with a few strokes of a pen. 3 months later, Ethan sat in a federal courthouse, watching Chloe's sentencing hearing. She had pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The prosecutor recommended 4 years in prison. Her lawyer begged for probation and community service. The judge split the difference, 3 years in a federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation and full restitution of the stolen funds. As the bailiff led her away, Chloe turned and looked at Ethan one last time. Her expression was no longer angry, just empty and utterly defeated. She had finally understood. Her boring, predictable husband had outplayed her completely. Ethan felt nothing as he watched her leave the courtroom. No satisfaction. No regret, no lingering love or hatred. Just the quiet calm of a ledger finally balanced. Outside the courthouse, Olivia was waiting for him. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can finally start living my life again. Any plans?" Ethan smiled, thinking of the investment opportunities he'd been researching, the business partnerships he'd been considering, the trips he'd been planning. "I'm thinking about buying a boat," he said. 6 months later, Ethan was sitting on the deck of his new cabin cruiser, the folded Ledger, watching the sunset over the Atlantic. The boat was a thing of beauty, 42 feet of polished wood and gleaming brass, with more than enough space for entertaining or for solitary cruising. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo, who was now his business partner in the successful financial consulting firm they had started together. "New client wants to meet tomorrow. Fraud investigation case. Interested?" Ethan typed back his reply, always happy to help people find the truth. He poured himself a glass of wine and opened his laptop. 3 new emails from potential clients, all seeking his help with complex financial investigations. Word was spreading that Ethan Hayes was remarkably good at uncovering hidden assets and corporate misconduct. It seemed he had found his true calling. He closed the laptop and watched the last sliver of sun disappear below the horizon. Tomorrow, he would go back to his new office, help new clients solve their problems, and continue to build his growing business. But tonight, he was exactly where he wanted to be, alone on his boat, the master of his own life, accountable to no one but himself. The old Ethan would have been racked with guilt over destroying so many lives. The new Ethan understood that he hadn't destroyed anything. He had simply revealed what was already broken. Grant was serving a 6-year sentence in a federal prison. His wife had divorced him. His children barely remembered his name. Justice. Chloe was in her 2nd year of incarceration, working in the prison laundry for 20 cents an hour, learning the hard lesson that actions have consequences. Justice. Olivia had received immunity in exchange for her testimony and had moved to another state to start over. She sent Ethan a Christmas card every year with no return address. Probably justice, though Ethan didn't much care either way. And Ethan? He had his boat, his business, his freedom, and his self-respect. He had learned that a boring accountant could be more dangerous than anyone ever suspected, if he was patient enough, and smart enough, to play the long game. The stars came out over the dark water, reflecting on the surface like scattered diamonds. Ethan finished his wine and went below deck to his comfortable cabin, where everything was exactly as he had arranged it. Perfect order. Complete control. No lies, no deception, no one plotting against him in the shadows. Ethan Hayes slept better than he had in years.